publics, the different divisions, documenting what absolutely needs to remain, and then having a full discussion on service delivery so that we can, in the future, budget have a better understanding of what we're doing during the budget process. The public input, like I said, it gets to the last bubble in that round thing, which is, to me, can be separate. And I only say that, it doesn't mean it doesn't have to happen. I think it needs to happen, because we all know, everybody loves, and you give an example again, the leaf vacuum. I think as elected officials, we know everybody likes the services we provide right now. But again, that's not the point of, to me, the exercise at the moment. The exercise is for us to get a better handle on our internal organization and how you can provide services more efficiently, if possible, and what our choices are. And then you go to the public and you talk and you go through those before you would adopt any changes. This consultant, because if we did pick Novak, because they are so experienced and they're out of state, I really would like to focus on their expertise, which is not more focus groups. And at this moment, it's more of the help us organize this data and so that then we can take that, our choices to the public. And so that's my only opinion. And I do agree with Trustee Amenta, if we didn't want to use general fund reserves, which doesn't increase the taxes at the moment, but would in the end have to subsidize debt at some point in the future, we could do that and not have a tax impact this year. So I would be willing to do that, and I also would be willing to lop off anything with DPW at the time.
I also would wonder how much of a cost savings we would find if we ended up doing other departments down the road versus,
right.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
if we're piecing it out and knowing that we want to do these other departments, is it, we'd have to talk to them, obviously, to figure that out, but, it might save us some money up front, but then in a year or 2 years, it's gonna cost more, because they're gonna have to come back and do it, not start over again, but do it again. Do you know what I mean?
I certainly do. I think that somebody's gonna have to come back anyways if we wanted public involvement at the later end. And I also think that to do the Senior Resource Center. So I understand what you're saying, but if they have to overlap, because they've talked to clerk again, or, I don't know. Yeah. So it looks like they did break it out, and so you're saying, out of the 12,600 cost for clerk, if they did it in the future, granted inflation, we gotta look at that, that's normal, but would this,
That's one of the reasons why I asked them to break it out in cost.
would this be 14, would it be a little more because they have to backtrack? What do you think? I don't know.
Right, so in that, I think they have some, like, transportation costs in that, because I don't think they have just one line from that. So that's, part of that is factored in, so that would, increase some of their costs.
Even if they were coming for the Senior Resource Center? I'm just, as phase 2.
Right, because all that is built into 1 year of trips. So this proposal is built on 1 year of trip. So if they're doing,
I was saying if we did a phase 1 with the Senior Resource Center, they'd be coming would there be additional other than that one?
police, we would like to do next year
So,
as well.
so that's what I'm saying, is they'd be coming anyways, so I don't think transportation would be
Okay.
any more.
Well, I mean, there are two an organizational study is a little bit different from an efficiency study, which is also different from a compensation study. And I'm kind of not clear, I mean, I know it seems like staff is really interested in an organizational study, and I get that.
You mean compensation
And compensation, but yeah, I mean, I think what we were looking for in budget context was efficiency. I mean, they kind of overlap, but they're different.
Yeah, that's the thing, I mean, if
service delivery?
we were focused on DPW, and you need to understand the operations, I mean, we've been looking at that for years, and it takes a lot of time and a lot of expertise, so, and I think that's the department we wanna look at closest, so I'd be interested in focusing on DPW and put enough resources in it to do it completely. For operationally.
Well, I was gonna mention on that, when you compare Lee Zimborski's proposal to Novak, he actually lists many more studies that are particular to DPW. So.
Right.
Is it just because he knows them? I just feel like Lee, I
I
always
know,
had
because
that
I wasn't
concern.
there in the interview, so I'm
He's
just.
done them in multiple states. So some of the recent studies he's done for DPW, one's been the St. Louis area, one was in Peoria, Illinois. So that's where, right, he
Okay,
has,
the
Does he
compensation?
seem to have,
No,
does he
no.
have more of an expertise in DPW than Novak?
Novak has much more experience looking at an entire organization as a
Yeah.
whole.
Right, right.
Lee, a lot of his studies have been more focused on individual
Right.
Mhm.
departmental areas. Yeah, but Novak has still done that, it's just typically when Novak's hired, they do a full organization study as a
everybody.
whole, yeah.
I mean, I really defer to the people who were in that, who were in, interviews. I
Okay.
mean, I'm not gonna, I mean, you guys met them and I think that means a lot, so I'm not gonna, but I mean, at this point, I mean, I'm feeling like, let's stick with DPW and, look for efficiencies and,
Stick
Right,
with,
we're gonna
stick
do-
with just DPW using Novak, or stick with
I
DPW
don't
using
have,
WHI?
I mean, I'll go with either one,
Yeah.
I mean,
But-
and I mean, this, I'm not like dead set on this, I could be convinced otherwise, so I'm just saying, you know.
I have one other question though, was this updated after for costs?
This is,
chart, your-
this is the recent, yeah, with
This is
the
the
recent
most
cost.
recent, so it's still at a one,
Yeah,
Yeah, they were still like
They're still the highest
$14,000
one.
over.
over.
Over budget. They were originally like 30.
No, I know, one's really low, I mean, 13,000 isn't that much, that's the only reason I asked, cause if it went up to 2, then they're the highest one, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, they were
they're still the highest, so that's why they got a one.
Right.
No, I mean, the rankings would, you would go up to,
Ray.
you would go up to, if it was a 2, you'd go up to 4.5, and they'd be ranked the highest in total points.
Right, if they would've passed someone.
If they would've had a 2 instead of 1, I
Yeah.
just was wondering if it had
Yeah,
been updated.
if you eliminate, once again, if you eliminate cost, Novak would have had the highest score. So that's where, you know,
Yeah.
you as a board, or as a committee,
Mhm.
you know, if you wanna move forward with Novak because of that, we could go back and work with a service agreement on them for all the services, or just DPW, whatever your preference is.
And can I just hear from Rebecca, because you were part of the interviews?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and as the manager, why would they have been ranked the highest if cost wasn't involved? What was the main sell point for you?
For me personally, when speaking, I mean, even though Novak wasn't here in person from an interview perspective, they hit a lot of boots on the ground operational aspects of what we do. And that is where I tend to go most, because a lot of you can have a pretty report and you can talk about a lot of things, but I wanna dive into the details of the here's what we do, here's the why behind what we do. Here are the other factors and pieces on the table, how can we look at those, or how can we look at those differently that maybe we haven't explored before? And that is what I heard them reverbalize to me during the scope of that. And
So it's
yeah, Sarah and Tyler would both, who else?
Me.
And Jessica.
Rachel was
Rachel,
the
that's
other
what
one.
we're gonna
That's
say,
your-
okay.
Yeah.
So,
Their interview answers were spot on. I mean, it was probably the strongest interview. I mean, would you agree with
I
that?
agree with that.
I mean, it was a really strong interview, and their work samples were really thorough. And I think that's, you know, knowing, you know, with the other studies that we've done, I think that's been a characteristic and a trait that the board currently values, is making sure we have a thorough, study done, so.
Well, and I guess when we get something like that, it's this question of, you have a document, okay, now what do we do
What are we
with
supposed
it,
to do with it?
right? It can't just be a document, it has to have some level of description of how do we go through implementation, what do we evaluate, what are our decision points? And it sounded like that's what they were bringing.
That's what I read, but I didn't know.
And I guess initially I didn't expect to, I thought it was, they're on speakerphone, right? So usually those are the least impressive,
Right.
right? They drag you away from attention and I was like, oh, I'm still with you. This is, so, I also look at it from the perspective that, so we're doing, we're looking to do an organizational study. With that, we know that a lot of the things that, have been in public works or any other department, quite frankly, have been the same for a very long period of time. And so, one of the things that we expect is change. I expect there to be change, employees expect there to be change, the board should expect there to be change, the community will need to expect change. So not everyone has that level of expectation when they go into it. So one of the things in your role, I would be asking is, do I have the factors in front of me in order to make good, educated decisions about why we're making the call we are? And when I say the call, meaning that not all the decisions you will make will be happy ones for everyone, right? Because people value services differently, and the board may look at it from a cost perspective or from a service delivery perspective.
Or each individual.
It may, right, it may
Or
have
different.
different value calls on that, you know, so I would just hate to, I would hate to get to the end of a study and say, oh, we have it, oh, but we're not really gonna do anything. Like, I guess I'm a doer that way. If we're gonna do a study, I wanna have some measurable prioritization after that about what we are going to do with it, and then I'd like to do that.
And this is my last comment, and then I'm done. The transportation study is an example that I'll use for a second. I just remember calling Rebecca, and I'm like, okay, I haven't gotten a chance to read it yet, the final recommendations, but what does it say about overnight parking? And she says, you know, and I said, does it say that there's no fiscal impact? Because I was reading the summary really quick, and it does. And I said, well, what does that mean? Because they're gonna lose all my ticket money, and I know I have a 2-car garage. That doesn't mean that I'm not gonna buy the permit. They're gonna lose, you know, we make 500. What does it say? And she said, I don't know, we'd have to hire, you know, there's nothing. And so,
They weren't descriptive. They were general, and with regards to their statement, at least in terms of my feedback on their draft report, that was one of the things that was highlighted for me.
and now what do we do with that? What do you do with that? I don't, as a vote, someone that votes, I still don't have enough information in order to do that vote. So anyways, I think that's what you're trying to get to at some level. That's all I have to say.
Novak kind of hit me as more technical, you know, lean process, more
That's a very
process
good way to describe it.
versus gov HR or retired or, you know, what are they gonna give you, the same old, you know, I'm sure they're very experienced, but the Novak seemed to be more in the process, more up to date, more looking at the process. It just scanning it.
In GovHR, and I'm not trying to, you know, they have a fine product. It's just a different, that's why my question of expectations, I kept bringing up in the scope of our meetings, because like, I feel uncomfortable because I don't feel like I have a sense of, an agreed, or even, or majority agreement on expectations, you know, and that's important to me.
I don't think it's, I mean, just from hearing from today, I don't think it's compensation. Correct me when I'm getting wrong here, or if you feel differently. It's from everything I've heard during our budget debates or deliverable, it's more of how do you reorganize in the future if needed. Doesn't mean it has to be done, but if you get to a point where you need to become more efficient, how could you do so? And we picked DPW, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, if anyone, I'm overstating, but because that was the largest department with the most divisions and a lot of assets. And so it was, if you had to look at one place, that would be the first place to look. That's what I heard. Is there anything more?
I'm not sure that, being a consultant, sometimes you are called in and you may look at something and say, well, you know, everything's fine, or you could do these changes, but it might not save you money. Or you could, I don't know, I wouldn't wanna presuppose that they're gonna necessarily come in and, you know, say, oh, you can do X, Y, and there may not be any low-hanging fruit. I don't think anybody here, you know, is a dummy. If there was something really easy to do to save money, I think Leanne would probably, you know, come up with that, hopefully.
I think there's gonna be some important choices.
I don't think there's gonna be low-hanging fruit, and I don't wanna, presuppose that they're gonna come in and have maybe they'll come in and say, there's very little you can do. We're a very small place, you know? I don't know that we have a whole lot of options. Maybe there are some, but, so anyway, I just don't wanna presuppose what the consultant is saying.
Valid point. And I guess one thing I should also, if I could clarify, when in the context of which I'm talking, I'm thinking less about next year and more towards where you are in 10 years.
Me too, absolutely.
And so what I've noticed here is that sometimes we haven't taken the time to do, and that's still 10 years away, right? So a lot can change in between that time, but it allows a roadmap and a sense of direction. And so if you are gonna make some different changes, none of these big if anything is big, it will not happen overnight. And that takes planning and collaboration and,
And like priority budgeting, when I went to the league's presentation on it, those are the people who are starting to use that software that ran out of options. I mean, the low-hanging fruit left, you know, they've had way more severe budget cuts, these big municipalities, than we have at our level, in our village. We're very, very fortunate, we have a great village with a higher income bracket. But when you get to that point, and I'm thinking 10 years, I mean, over the next 10 years, this year, I remember staff advising us, anything else you touch is gonna have effect on service delivery. And so knowing that, I don't wanna make those decisions without the information at all.
That's true, so do we have direction on it?
I don't think so.
We're not
I'm
giving-
hearing
I'm in
consensus on
favor of-
public works.
I'm in favor
Right.
of Public Works and Novak.
I can do that.
And so just having them only look at Novak, I mean, having Novak only look at Public Works
How much
and
did they-
understanding,
What were they, 46 something for every, for
33, I think.
Was there anything at all about, like, that you have in mind that's so overlapping with finance and public works?
well, what?
Or that you really needed to be studied at this
Your
time?
entire utility
Because that
operation.
doesn't
Okay, so
count as
utilities,
61.
so I just asked Rebecca, cause I don't know this and it's new information. Is there anything that overlapped between DPW and say finance, right? That was so integrate in her perspective, and she said the utilities.
Mhm.
It hits us too.
I mean,
Well, I would say that's the biggest, so a lot of our, so we have boots on the ground from a public works perspective for the people, I'll just use the example of going out to fix the main, right? Read the meter. The other 2/3 of that is delivered by customer service and through finance.
Oh, I see what you're
Maybe,
saying.
maybe it's not a third, right? They do,
So the
you know, more
performance
than,
of the task from start to finish is not just one
Which
place.
is